One unexpected story to come out of UFC 271 weekend is the absence of one Joe Rogan. Did Joe Rogan decide to stay at home? Did the UFC tell Joe Rogan to stay at home? Or did ESPN tell Joe Rogan to stay at home? Let's talk about it before we do. My name's Rahul J. Chan. This is The Battle Camp. Thank you very much for joining me. If you're new to the channel, please do consider subscribing. All right, now look. Before we speculate about what happened, let's just put some of the jigsaw pieces of the puzzle in order. I think that makes sense. So on Friday, Michael Bisping tweets out, he's got a last minute call to come to Houston to commentate on UFC 271. And then Ara Helwani, I think, tweeted, Twitter's going to get real interesting. And then I believe there was some sort of a press release or a tweet from the UFC account or something official from the UFC side saying Joe Rogan won't be present to cover UFC 271 because he's had a scheduling clash. And then at that moment, I sat there and I thought to myself, this makes no sense. Because UFC 271 has been in the calendar for months. And Joe Rogan, as we know, only commentates during numbered events that happen in the USA. I know you said in the UFC. In the USA. And UFC 271 happens to be a numbered event. And it happens to have happened in the USA. So it fits the criteria required for Joe Rogan to be present, right? And then after that statement released by the UFC, I started to see people tweet out, boycott UFC 271, don't buy the pay-per-view. Joe Rogan has been told to stay at home by ESPN. Don't buy the pay-per-view. And then you had the other side, the far left or whatever they're called, who was saying, so glad that Joe Rogan's staying at home. It's a positive. It's a good thing. Like that Trent Rainsmith, whatever the guy's name is. I don't know if you've seen him on Twitter, but boy, I bet he's fun at parties. Fucking hell. It's so draining. It's so draining reading his tweets. I still follow him. And I'm not one of these people that agrees with, if you don't like it, unfollow. No, I'd like to have all of the information to hand to form an opinion. So I like to follow all different types of opinions to then work out where I sit in the spectrum of opinions when it comes to different events and things that happen in life, right? But mate, he's really drains my battery, that guy does, Trent Rainsmith, and just the tone of his tweets. But anyway, he seems to be very anti Joe Rogan, and he seemed to be quite happy about the fact that Joe Rogan won't be present. I listened to the 3-pack show, Ara Helwani, the best there was, the best there is, the best there ever will be, Chuck Mindenhall, and Pete Carroll. They do a show on Green Room on Spotify, which is quite entertaining. They were kind of talking about the fact that Joe Rogan's going to not be at the event. Anyway, fast forward to the event itself. I'm watching the main event. Israel Adesanya's fighting Robert Whittaker, and Israel Adesanya keeps doing this to his glove as they're kind of in the stand-up. And Joe Rogan and John Anik announces, guys, I've just had a tweet from Joe Rogan. And he thinks that Israel Adesanya might have a broken hand because he keeps touching his glove. And then I thought to myself, mate, you were meant to have a scheduling conflict. So why are you watching this? Why are you watching this fight? There's a scheduling conflict. You shouldn't be watching this if there's a scheduling conflict. Because if you're watching it here, what's stopping you from watching it in the arena, right? Anyway, so this whole thing played out. And in my mind, I felt as though ESPN were feeling the heat from CNN and the left and whoever else is out there to get Joe Rogan. And I've made a video previously to share my opinion on the latest controversy with Joe Rogan and where I sit in terms of the claims that he's racist, etc. My opinion on all of this is pretty clear, and I don't feel as though he should be cancelled, and I don't feel as though he should be stopped from commentating on on during events because of footage that has been come back to light from things that he has said literally over 5 years ago, and this footage was available and out there in the ether throughout this period. I just can't correlate why now's the time that people need to be upset about it. Do you know what I mean? But anyway, that's all by the by. Then Dana White was asked about it, and then Dana White said no, Joe Rogan could have worked if he wanted to. It was his decision to stay at home, and I think he even said there was no scheduling conflict. Joe Rogan didn't want to work today, but he's more than welcome to work in the future. And then that kind of threw me a little bit, because at that point I thought to myself, well, this doesn't add up. This doesn't adhere to the narrative that I had built up in my own mind of what's happened, right? And I felt as though, is there a rift between Joe Rogan and Dana White? Like, have they fallen out over this? Because that kind of, the answer that Dana White provided there, it felt kind of, I mean, he can be quite adversarial at the best of times, right? But Joe Rogan's a guy that he's never been that way towards. And I felt it was a bit kind of, his response felt a little bit kind of, what's the right word? And it's an easy word. I should just know it off the top of my head. But it felt like there was a conflict there, right? And that wasn't even the word that I was looking for, but it fits. It fits. Apologies. Anyway, so that kind of left me at a bit of a loose end, because now what I was thinking, that the narrative that I'd built up in my head, it didn't quite fit. The pieces didn't fit together, right? So I did something that I'm not proud of. But me being quite inquisitive and needing to get answers to questions that I've got in my mind, I tuned into Brendan Schaub's on the Thick Boy Network Calabasas Fight World. Calabasas Fight, obviously. Calabasas Fight Companion, not Fight World. So I tuned into it. And I think it's pretty obvious how I feel about Brendan Schaub and his opinions. But one thing that I do know from consuming hours of content that included Brendan Schaub for my sins is this is something that he 100% would have definitely addressed. And it's something that he can't help not talk about, right? So I tuned into that Fight Companion, and luckily he spoke about it pretty early on. And one thing that he did say is it's not my story to share, but I've got a lot more respect for Dana White after what had happened to Joe Rogan. So then that was almost like a double crossing, because like Dana White is literally just saying it's Joe Rogan's decision to not work. He could have worked if he wanted to. There's no scheduling conflict, which made it feel as though he was trying to push the pressure onto Joe Rogan. And he blatantly said there wasn't a scheduling conflict. And then Brendan Schaub over here, who obviously doesn't have the best relationship with Dana White because of the spats that they've had personally in the past, he sat there saying, oh, I've got a lot more respect for Dana White. Dana White's a badass. And what he did tonight for Joe Rogan. So now I'm thinking, what did he actually do? So here's where I start to speculate. And this is what I think happened. And this isn't, obviously I don't have any sources because I'm not in the industry like that. And I don't have any facts or evidence to back this up. And the only way we're going to find this out, I'm pretty sure we'll find it out on the Joe Rogan podcast at some point. He'll talk about it all. I feel as though Joe Rogan's been coming under a lot of pressure recently. And I feel as though it may have been a request that came in to the UFC, to Joe Rogan by ESPN. Is there any way we can avoid having Joe Rogan on the broadcast? Because we don't need this heat right now. And I reckon why Brendan Schaub was so proud of Dana White. He said to Rogan, if you want to work, you're working. And he went back to ESPN and said, we're not having this bullshit. We're not having you dictate whether Joe Rogan works or not. He's working. And if you've got a problem with that, then we're going to have to do something to sort it out, because I'm not pulling him from this broadcast. And under that cloud, I'm speculating that Joe Rogan decided, you know what? I'm 50 something years old. I've got hundreds of millions of dollars. I don't really need this. I probably would have liked to have been there, but I don't have to be here. If it makes it easier for everyone, I'll make the decision to just stay at home. And then at that point, Dana White said, Joel, you're a fucking badass. I love you. I'm still paying you. And Brendan Schaub heard all of this and decided that he's a big fan of Dana White. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if that's how things unfolded on Friday and Saturday. But what do you guys think? What do you guys think happened? And what do you make of all of this? I think it's pretty clear what my opinion is in the previous video that I've done. And obviously this one that I've kind of touched on briefly. I don't feel as though Joe Rogan should be cancelled. And that's not because I'm a fan of his necessarily, right? I quite enjoy listening to Michael Bisping. I quite enjoy listening to Felder. I quite enjoy listening to Dominic Cruz, right? I don't need Joe Rogan there to make the experience better for me. I barely listen to the Joe Rogan podcast at this point in my life. But if someone who can I think of? I was trying to think of a stand-up comedian that is quite popular that I don't find very funny, but I can't think of someone in the top of my head. Brendan Schaub, but he's not very popular. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make is if it's someone that I don't even have a vested interest in was in this position that Joe Rogan is, I'd still be saying the same stuff. I don't believe people should be cancelled. I believe there should be a way to come back from bad situations. I believe there's a way you should be able to apologize, demonstrate that you're actually sorry, demonstrate that your behavior is now changed, demonstrate that you understand the mistakes you've made and you've grown from that mistake, and continue to function in society the same way you were functioning before you made that mistake, right? Unless obviously you've killed someone or done something really egregious. Do you get what I'm trying to say? But anyway, these are my opinions. This is what I think happened. Please feel free to share your opinions. Please feel free to tell me what you think happened with regards to Rogan Gate and UFC 271. Let's have a dialogue, and then we can take it from there. We can speak again. Comment below. Don't forget to like. If you've enjoyed this, share. If you're going to share it, you may as well subscribe. And if you haven't already subscribed and you got this far down the video, then I don't know what you're doing with your life. You need to sort yourself out. I'll catch you guys next time.